Everyone. My name is Andrea Castillo. I'm a librarian at Alexandria Library in Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome to tonight's edition of Social Distancing Cinema with the Tangle. We're very lucky to be joined tonight by director and cast of the film, The Tangle. And so we've got Chris Kelly here tonight with us. Director, writer, actor Jessica Graham, Belle Delia, and of course our host David Lawton with Oddball Cinema. And David, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay, as I said, I chose tonight's movie. During the pandemic, I have been watching a lot of movies, a pace of about 50 movies a month. And that doesn't include about 20 more a month that I don't watch all the way through. I just bail out of them after the first 5 to 10 minutes. They're obviously junk. So I'd like to start out by telling you a little bit about why I selected your movie and why I like it. I like the style of this movie. You take the sensibilities of 1930s crime drama and you mash it up with plausible near future tech. I could imagine if one of them were alive today, Humphrey Bogart or George Raft could play one of the roles in this film. Back in the 30s, strong female roles really weren't plentiful, but maybe Joan Crawford could have been one of the female roles. Maybe your genocidal cop. The costumes and your deliberate use of obsolete technology really create a believable haven from the Tangle infected outside world, and a place where your future noir slang fit perfectly. I really like that. So the incongruities. Yes, thank you. I was an English teacher once, and that's a very embarrassing thing for me to do, but I've had a stressful day. The incongruities of the various elements embody the movie's, what I see as a central paradox. Please correct me if I'm way off base on this. One of the characters describes the world as one where everyone knows everything about everyone, yet the entire plot is about uncovering secrets. I really like that paradox. And I particularly liked your use of the word grok. I know where that comes from.
Right.
I also, as I said, I used to be an English teacher. I appreciate the subtle effect of the Tangle that I don't know if you intended it or not, but I can imagine that a network that monitors and records your every move and places certain limits on your actions would create a craving for escape. And your characters repeatedly interrupt their highly technical and sometimes abusive dialogue by spontaneously reciting poetry. As far as I can tell, the Tangle doesn't quite understand poetry yet, but who does? And, I particularly, as an English teacher years ago, I particularly enjoyed hearing quotations from Coleridge and Wordsworth. So that was a very interesting mix of influences and styles. So that is why I chose this as an oddball film. And I'll give all of you from the film a chance to react to that if you like.
I'll start first. Thank you, David. Thanks for watching it, and thanks for that commentary. Yeah, you really seem to enjoy what we were going for in the film, and it's an odd mixture of things. You're making a film this small. It just felt like we should focus on making something unlike anybody else would make. So, and we feel pretty confident we did that. And yeah, there's all the things you mentioned are there, the poetry and the paradoxes of knowledge and secrets, and also the incongruities of future and past technology, and the language and the style being, you know, sort of a mixture of different types of things. So yeah, we were going for all of that, and yeah, that thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Anything else from the cast members, but before I go into a couple more questions?
Thanks for watching our film. Thanks for having it as part of your pandemic entertainment. We appreciate it. And yeah, ever since you said Joan Crawford as Francesca, I've been trying to figure out who would play Laurel, and I'm like, Katharine Hepburn. Like, I feel like it actually would be like a mix between Katharine and Audrey to play Laurel. I think is what would be needed. Or there's someone else entirely that I'm just not thinking of.
You've got to be vulnerable, but in the end, you've got a backbone of steel.
Yeah.
Maybe Lauren Bacall.
I was going to say Lauren Bacall. That was one of the thoughts I had, but then I got stuck on the Hepburns because I just love them so much. But yeah, I think Lauren Bacall. I think you're right. Yeah,
that would have been cool if we could have cast Lauren Bacall. No offense.
That's all right. I mean, one day we will be, you know, you'll be able to cast Lauren Bacall in your film.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Soon enough.
That is quite busy.
Well, let me get into a couple of questions. I have my notes on another screen here. Chris, you wrote and directed the movie. So what inspired this story?
Yeah, Belle, did you have anything to say about the comment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was also making, you know, we've got our limited time with the wonderful Jessica Graham. But yeah, look, just, I mean, in short, I think I got to see it from a different perspective, obviously, with the role I played in it. And I think the beautiful thing to me about the film that sums up, I guess, what I feel like you said, is there's all these limitations in it. And when there's limitations on humans, words are something they have, like words are just an expression that they still have control over. So I love that beauty of like how everyone has that control still and they use it.
Yeah, I think for the general population in this movie, there might be instances where you just want to reach out and hit somebody, but you can't because of the tangle. And so you'll just spit out a particularly poignant bit of poetry.
Well, I could actually beat I'm forgetting your name. I'm forgetting my husband's name. Edward. I could beat Edward up because we're inside a safe room. So
yeah.
I
don't feel so bad about forgetting how to pronounce incongruity anymore.
So anyways, you asked about the inspiration. You know, we had made some short films that had done well on the festival circuit, and we were ready to make a feature. So I was writing one script, but it was getting a little bit big budget. So I shifted gears and wrote this script, and it really was just writing writing from my sensibility, from science fiction, which I grew up on, and poetry, which my parents were poets, and from the idea that we had a very limited budget. So it really was just, I wrote it very quickly, and it came out just as a, you know, very much represents my sensibility of things. And, you know, we knew we would have limited locations, but I wanted to do a future tech thing. So it, you know, it sort of made sense to figure out the idea of a safe room sort of popped out of that idea. And once we had the tangle and the safe room, sort of and the poetry, it all sort of popped out. The idea of somebody using poetry to train an artificial intelligence was a cool idea. And it's sort of another reason why I think everybody in this world, in the safe room world, speaks lyrically. They sort of were working with poetry for many years, training Cleo. So
now, all of the characters have plausible American names. The names don't call attention to themselves. But with regard to Cleopatra, was there any particular intent in choosing that name?
I don't know. There probably was, but no. If you look at one point in the film, we sort of scan around the room, and you can see a bunch of boxes, and they're all classical names, like Aristotle, Marcus, and like they're different. So Cleopatra was the last iteration of these artificial intelligences. I know that I was doing a play on words, which I don't think anybody has caught, but that's fine. There's lots of them in there. I didn't expect people to catch them, but we call it the ASP, which is asp, and Cleopatra was killed by an asp, or killed herself by an asp, and so that was a little play on words there, but that's not why she was named Cleopatra.
I should have caught that, but I did not notice that when I watched the film.
There's a lot of little things in there. I would not expect you to catch it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's 1,000 layers that some people will never get through in a lifetime.
Yeah, well, writers and artists of all types put all sorts of layers of meaning into their work that, they spring from the subconscious. So you need people like me to tell you, hey, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Well, the influence of old crime dramas is so prominent. I have a question for all of the actors. I don't know if it's particularly relevant to Cleopatra, but did you model your performance after any old Hollywood actor or character?
No, I didn't. I modeled the character off of fear, because I was terrified of the character. It was a really challenging role for me. And Chris knows me very, very well. And Joshua Baton, who's the lead of the film, knows me very, very well. And so I couldn't really get away with anything other than completely believable. And the dialect is challenging, and the cadence and the pace of the script is challenging. And I was also producing, and so it took me a little while to kind of shake off the terror I felt on embarking. But when I finally did, for me, it was more about finding Laurel in my body and kind of where she lived somatically. And interestingly, a big part of that are about the shoes that a character wears. Like, shoes are very, very important to me. And so Laurel wore these particular shoes that get highlighted at the end of the film. And I was so set on like the shoes that I wore them one day for about 16 hours, and my heels were numb for a year. Numb for a year from wearing the shoes. So I learned that lesson, that the shoes are not that important.
Plus, I have to say that Jessica looks like she was born in that time period.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was lucky. I got to come on board and see some of the scenes when they were in post, and everyone looked like they were just trapped in that time capsule. It was beautiful.
Well, the safe room was kind of a, like a pressure cooker, in that it just amplified everybody's emotions, in the close proximity. It was just, everyone's bouncing off everyone else. Well, really, everyone's bouncing off Josh very painfully.
You would like to hear that.
Edward, I have the same question for you about the inspiration for your role. Were you modeling your performance after any particular actor or character?
No, I wasn't. When I wrote it, I knew I'd be directing. So I wrote something that would be sort of in my wheelhouse. And the rhythm of the language I think for all the actors, once we talked about it, was probably the most important. It was like the skeleton for all the performances, because I hear my scripts with a very specific kind of rhythm to them. So I wrote Edward in a rhythm that was just very easy for me. And I find it easy to do the kind of righteous interrogator who's pretty smart. I find that as a fairly straightforward role. I don't know where the mustache idea came from, actually. I don't know where do you remember me talking about that ever, Jessica? Or
I can't remember how that happened, but I remember
think
when it happened. It was just like, this is it. And it's horrible and amazing.
I think I probably just wanted to look like something I had never looked like in a film. And I've done a lot of different looks. So, I mean, obviously it had to fit the idea of the period as well. But I liked it because it made Edward immediately unlikable.
Yeah, you just let your natural evil side take over. It wasn't
Yeah.
really
Well,
an
yeah,
invented character.
I'm regularly cast as not a nice guy.
Yeah. Oh, I wrote you. I've seen you in 2 other films, and yeah, you are not the virtuous type.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? I don't want to ask all the questions.
Well, I want to ask Belle, when you got these sides, and because we've talked a lot about how you're like the perfect Cleo and how amazing your audition was and the whole story of that, but how did you work with the material when you received these sides, if you remember? Like,
gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's like with you, because you started the films, it's indie filmmaking, such a process, and it starts many years before, and many years before that when Chris sits down. And I think, gosh, when I got it, I mean, obviously just the beauty of it is apparent straight away. I love things that have a real heartbeat, and I think that's what I felt like when I was reading it. Well, I was intimidated. I was definitely intimidated by it, but I also felt its heartbeat, and I loved immediately. I think I just read Cleo, and I read obviously the whole thing. I didn't just read my part, but I read Cleo as being a heartbeat, and I know it's the artificial, and I don't know how much we can say on something that's been recorded for later, but there's this sense where I can
I'm not worried about it.
Oh, there's this sense that even though
I think people find it challenging enough. Spoilers are not a problem.
Yeah, yeah, it's like we'll help you out here a little bit. This artificial intelligence called Cleo, she carries with her, it's like sheddings of humans, like as they've created her, so she has humanity in her. Even though she's artificially created, she has humanity just ingrained in her DNA, whatever her DNA is. So that's definitely how when I first read it, Jessica, that's definitely how I saw it immediately. And I love things. I think there's just that side where it's like, you always want to be a humanitarian. It's nice to do that. It's nice to feel that. And that, to me, it felt like Cleo had aspects of being a humanitarian.
Thanks. I love that. I love that you saw her as the heartbeat, and that's how you approached it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Belle gave a great audition. Most of the people didn't. Most of our actors didn't. All of our actors didn't have to audition,
except for Mary Jane Wells and
Belle. Mary Jane. Yeah. So Mary Jane and Belle both gave really, really good auditions. It was great.
So I think one thing that really, really struck me, and this is a theme that I've thought about over the years of my life, but this film really just made me think about it again, is the concept of betrayal, and how much it hurts because of the source of where things come from. And so I also don't want to I want to avoid spoilers or anything, but I guess I don't know if can any of you touch on Chris, as you're approaching it from writing it. I don't know what you wanted to say or to express through about the topic of betrayal, and then each of you in scenes in the film where it affects your characters, how you approach your actions and your motivations for things that happen. So I don't know if my question makes any sense, but.
Sure. I think Jessica is probably best to answer that first because of her character's relationship with betrayal.
Sure. Well, interestingly, there's a key scene where Laurel finds out that for sure that she has been betrayed. And I still get upset when I watch the film and see that scene. I still feel in my body this boiling and this anger and this grief. So it was very alive for Laurel, evidently. And for me, it's interesting because Chris and I are partners. And so imagining different kinds of betrayal with your acting partner is interesting. Imagining different kinds of betrayal with your acting partner who's also actually your romantic partner is really interesting. So it was kind of an interesting sort of web to play with as far as my emotional preparation for that experience. But certainly, I think in some ways, Laurel feels that she's betrayed herself because she's lived for all these years in a way that's actually not entirely true for her. At least that's my experience of Laurel. May not be what was written, but it's my experience of her. And so while there's a really obvious betrayal in the script, I think there's a more subtle betrayal of the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the decades that can vanish, and you're not being true to yourself, and you're not doing what is in alignment and what is authentic. And that kind of self-betrayal is potentially the worst. And so I think Laurel tussles with that quite a bit.
There's one particular scene that I think is very specific to what you're talking about. When Laurel calls Carter, she's wearing a hat. The hat has a black veil that covers her face, as if she is mourning the relationship that she believes is dying, or mourning the years that she spent on this project, as you said, without being true to herself. Was that a conscious choice?
Yeah,
because it's a really interesting piece of costuming right there.
Yeah, well, I'll let Chris answer as far as the costuming, because it was ultimately his decision on that costume choice. But I will say that Laurel's pull to the outside world and to Carter in particular is definitely strong. And there's a lot of sorrow and longing. I mean, my favorite line in the film is, I'm the lion in the cage watching the meat walk by. She's got so many beautiful lines, but yeah, absolutely. That was a very sort of bittersweet kind of experience, that conversation. And then what happens after it it's very interesting, kind of the next event that occurs. But I'm interested to hear, Chris, what if that veil was your choice?
I have no recollection. But as you said, David, there are subconscious things there, and I totally see what you're saying. And there it really is that totally, the way you're describing it is totally how I see that scene, in the sense of her. It's a big step, like the thing she's doing, and there's a big transition. And I guess grieving is a kind of transition. I don't know if that was specifically in my mind, but she's clearly making a huge transitional choice in her life at that point. So I probably, knowing me, just thought it looked good aesthetically.
It's also it's an instance of Laurel, but I'm majorly betraying the agreements and rules of my life and the structure of my whole reality. So yeah, I think there's a lot happening in that conversation.
Which is a response to your feeling that you have been betrayed.
Exactly. And so it goes.
And I just want to say something about the betrayal. It's not, it probably wasn't a theme I was consciously thinking about as I was writing this, at least not in that language. Obviously, I was writing about secrets, and in a film this claustrophobic, it's all going to be about what people are holding back and hiding from each other. So it by necessity leads to different versions of betrayal. So it's really cool to hear you say that's sort of the theme that came out, and I can totally see how that comes out of this sort of the way I was thinking about it.
I want to hear from Belle about betrayal, because in some ways it's like, what a painful betrayal to see what's potentially happening.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting, like you said, because it does cut both ways, even for Cleo. I mean, she feels, oh my gosh, like especially the scenes with what's Joshua's character again? Hang
Carter
on.
Carmichael.
Carter.
Carter, yes. With Carter, it's like there's definitely that sense of like where you're trapped into keeping secrets that you have to for the sake of survival, you know. So it's yeah, it cuts both ways. She absolutely is facing betrayal from the agents, but then has to do what's necessary to survive. Which don't we all, you know?
Yeah, I like this. I like this way of thinking about it. Honestly, I never have, because yeah, it's like what I want always in my films is to have characters that are neither evil or good. And it's been fun to have at festivals have some people like, you know, Edward's clearly the bad guy in a certain way, but some people are totally on his side and some people are not, and that's really cool. And Cleo again is like this sort of godlike figure, but she's a little scary too. So she's sort of doing things in a humane way, but she's also a little scary, and she's just cut her leash, you know, and that was sort of a betrayal of the rules of her entire creation. So and Laurel obviously is being betrayed and betraying, and likewise with Edward. And Carter was kicked out of the organization which he was sort of the head of, and cut off from Cleo, who he's sort of in love with. So yeah, it's interesting to think of it in those terms.
I can see people sympathizing with Edward. You know, the Cleo is this overriding worldwide control network. In another movie, it shows up as Skynet. And so even though you are a nefarious character, sometimes characters need to use evil to do good. If you think of overthrowing the machine as good, then, you know, by any means necessary.
Well, and I think like I kind of am interested in this phenomenon that's been happening in films a lot, that you have villains that like you see them like the soft, not the softer side, but like sort of their experience and like why they think the way they think. And of course, you could always make the argument that lots of people have been through trauma and they have channeled that in less destructive ways. But I think like humanizing the villain and not making them so cartoonish, I think is really fascinating. It makes for really interesting art and film and movies. So, you know, because we have Edward talking about like why he's doing what he's doing. And, you know, I don't know that I would agree with, I would not carry it out the same way, but like he at least feels like he's doing it for like a greater good.
Yeah, Edward is the hero as far as Edward is concerned. So. But yeah, I like characters that have this sympathetic side, and but also in a murder mystery like this, you do need to have all the characters be viable as bad guys or good guys for at least a while.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I'm going to say
thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Oh no.
What a
I
pleasure.
only just got to see you again.
I know. And you're looking
I'm
absolutely gorgeous, luminous, radiant.
Oh, you too.
Oh,
it's
thank
so
you.
lovely to see
Oh,
your face.
you
Yes,
mean
we're
Belle.
talking with
Oh,
you,
okay.
With
We're
you, David.
We're
It was a
talking with
pleasure.
everybody.
Pleasure to be with you, and enjoy the rest of the conversation. And I'll be sure to maybe watch it later on.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thanks for
Bye.
having me.
It's funny what you were saying about villains. I love what you said too, Chris, because it's like I think we all have a bit of villain in us, and it's like that's why we do, you know, we need to see both sides. We need to explore it all, you know, as humans. I think it's healthier, better to explore through film and than anything else.
Yeah, some people express it by committing crimes, some express it by making films.
Yeah.
Or both. Yeah.
You know, if I manage the Oddball Crime Club, you know, this would be a different discussion entirely. Well, I have a weird little technical question. Probably Chris is the best to answer this. In the opening scene, Edward comes across this enormous circular platform. I'm just making a wild guess that you didn't build that for the film.
Nope.
What is it and where is it?
It is north of Los Angeles in the mountains, and there's actually several of them around Los Angeles. I don't actually know what it is, but I know what it's associated with. There were, in Los Angeles, there were a number of anti-missile sites that were part of the Cold War, designed to somehow protect against attacks. And these things are always up in the mountains near those things. Maybe it's not associated with those, but that's how I found it, just driving around looking for locations. But I really don't know what it is. It has a little drainage thing in the center, so maybe it's some kind of water tank down below or something. But there's a number of them. I go hiking a lot, and I've seen a number of them around.
Mhm. Could
I
be
was
a
very-
UFO. Could be a UFO landing platform.
It could be that too, without knowing. Yeah, it's a cool thing. So I found that location, and it essentially looks over Los Angeles, and or northern Los Angeles, and so we drove up there to shoot there in the morning, and we got up there, and I had only been there once before in the afternoon, and when we got up there, there was that cloud cover, which is a big part of that shot, and I was like, we had a whole bunch of shots planned with the car and all that stuff. And I was like, I got to go up on the platform right away. We got to shoot this while the cloud cover is still there. And it literally lasted 15 minutes. And then it was starting to blow up over the mountains. And you saw some of those shots too, of the
Oh yeah.
fog coming up. But we literally, it's one of my favorite shots in the movie, and it's totally luck. Well, partially luck.
That's one thing I really love actually when I watched the film for the first time completed, is that you have those big beautiful shots, but because of that, sometimes there's the characters will refer to something going on out in the Tangle, and I have to question, like, did I see that? Was that in it, or was it in my imagination? Like, it's done really well, where you have like kind of covered that area where you think you've actually seen more of the Tangle than you actually did see in the film. So
cool.
Obviously capturing imagination really well, which is a good plus.
Low budget tricks. I'm glad.
You did that trick well.
We tend to focus on the independent films, and a lot of times the filmmakers will talk about, for budget reasons, we did this instead of that, and the thing that we'd originally planned would have been crap compared to what we got with our bargain basement approach.
Yeah, I don't know who was saying this, but the idea of the safe room is a limitation on the characters and stuff, but artistically, limitations are really a source of great creativity. So this entire movie is what happened because of the limitations we knew we would be working with, and I think that's cool personally.
Well, as I've made obvious already, I think it came out really well. I have one last sort of compound question, and it's to both of you who remain. I'm always on the hunt for new, unusual and obscure movies. Like I said, I watch about 50 complete movies a month and throw away about 20 more. Interestingly, Chris has been featured in 3 Oddball events over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
We also showed Ink and The Frame, both films I loved, and were very popular with the membership.
Cool.
The first 2 we showed before we began the Zoom events with the library. Otherwise, I would have written to you a whole lot sooner, or more likely the director of those films. So I have a 2-part question. What projects are you working on now? Whatever you're, feel free to say. And do you have any favorite movies that you think would be good candidates for our series?
Go ahead, Bill. Oh, she looks like she's frozen. So I will go.
I didn't mean for the question to be scary.
Right. So the first question was
current projects.
Oh, right. I just finished a screenplay for the next film I hope to make, which is not a tiny budget, and it is a meditation thriller, and I'm excited about that. It's about a meditation technology that speeds up the process of meditation. Both Jessica and I teach meditation and have been on lots of 10-day silent retreats and those kinds of things. So it's kind of a altered states kind of sci-fi thriller that I'm making. I'm just finished the edit on a short film I made called Behemoth, which should be out soon, and I'm proud of that. And I have a number of other writing projects that I've been doing.
Is there a literal behemoth in that short film, or is it a metaphor?
That is an entirely poetic short film. It's a kind of a tantric poem, really. Very visual poetry. I'm just speaking to camera very aggressively. The behemoth that's mentioned literally is the black hole at the center of our galaxy.
Ah.
Yeah.
And the second part of the question, since Belle has disappeared, is do you have any favorite movies that you think would be good candidates for oddball cinema, now that you know the oddball stuff we look for?
But I'm guessing you mean really small films.
No. We show major films for, like I have 13 movies in July. 12 of them can be big budget films from major studios, as long as there's something odd about them.
Okay, I got some for you then. If you gave me a little more time, I could come, because I like odd films, but Brain Dead is a good one.
Showed that in October.
Okay, there you go. Let's see. Well, these are kind of big. Brazil.
Showed that at the library.
Okay, yeah. I'm in the right. At least I'm in the right wall.
Oh yes,
ballpark.
those are both good films.
What's coming to mind? Just on the off, you should watch. If you like the films I've been, you should watch Infinity Chamber, which is a independent sci-fi film. You could call it oddball. It's a little more sci-fi, straight up sci-fi, but.
Yeah, I read the description. I mean, I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
I read the description and it just didn't sound odd enough.
Yeah, it may not be oddball enough. It's about a guy talking to, well, I guess I shouldn't give that away. It's kind of odd, but yeah. I could come up with a bunch, but on short notice, it's sort of, nothing's coming to mind.
I mean, over the course of the past year, I have found some gloriously odd films.
Yeah.
Quentin Dupieux with both Rubber and Wrong. I love Wrong. It's about a man's search for his missing dog. Unfortunately, he lives in a universe where cause and effect does not apply.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, it's crazy. And it's available online free.
Great.
And one of my absolute favorites was The Congress.
Okay.
It's I can't remember the name of the actress who was the star of the Princess Bride. She plays herself as an actress who's aging out of the Hollywood mainstream. She's not getting offers anymore. And so her agent brings her a contract, a different kind of contract. And when
I've seen this. Yeah.
And when she signs it, everything changes.
I saw that. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen this, but or showed this. The Lobster is a very oddball film.
I saw that in the theater. It was one of the last ones I saw in the theater before the pandemic, and I really didn't appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I liked it, but it's definitely oddball. You have to agree with that.
Oh, extremely odd.
Yeah,
but not only does it have to be odd for me to put it on the
Crowe. What's his name?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yes.
Another Aussie guy. Yeah.
Yes.
And in order for me to put it on the schedule, so we have 3 organizers, and the other 2 put films on the schedule too. But they work. I'm retired, so I do most of the films. And during social distancing cinema, starting in March of last year, I've done almost all of them. I think the other 2 organizers have scheduled no more than 8 films in total, and we do 12 to 14 a month. So in order for me to put it on the schedule, not only does it have to be odd enough, but I actually have to like it, because
that's good.
I'm the impresario. I get up. I used to do this at the library, and I'd get up and I'd say, I think this film is great. I tell the audience why it's great, show them the film. And then I'd have people come up to me and they'd say, that film was great. Told you it was great.
Did you like the Don Quixote de la Mancha with from what's his name? That was odd. from the same guy who did Brazil. I'm blanking on his name.
Terry
Yeah,
Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam, yeah.
I have a DVD of that sitting over here. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's worth watching. It's good. Yeah,
I mean,
Zero Effect is also an odd film, but I don't know if you'd like that film, but that's a Terry Gilliam film as well.
Zero Theory.
Zero Theory, right? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it and I didn't really like it a lot. It's definitely extremely odd.
Yeah. I like The Lobster better than that one, but yeah.
I liked The Lobster also, although to be fair, probably that's the only one out of probably most of those that you guys have listed in the bunch. So I'm sure I have a lot more odd film viewing to do.
That you've seen or that you liked?
Both. I like it's very I thought it was kind of like pretty offbeat, but I liked it a lot. Yeah.
I think everybody has to watch Brazil. I think Brazil is one of those films that has to be watched.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Let's see, the same director who did The Lobster, the Sacred Deer one, I once read a review that said something like the characters of the Sacred Deer would think that The Lobster was like a pleasant dream, and for some reason that like really creeped me out.
Yeah.
So I
still haven't watched that one either. It doesn't seem appealing enough to turn.
I saw it.
Like there's something really disturbing about, like, I get this really ominous sense when I read the reviews about it, and so I haven't brought myself to watch that one.
I saw it, and it's a grim tale. Now, I'm not averse to dark, grim tales, but I just didn't get much enjoyment out of it.
Okay.
I'm sure you've showed Scissorhands on the Oddball.
That's a little too mainstream for us.
All right.
I mean, movies at some point become so well known that they're no longer. It was like when The Wizard of Oz was first released, it was extremely oddball, and in fact, nobody liked it. The critics didn't like it. Audiences didn't come to see it in the theaters. But then it acquired such a following that there's nothing more mainstream. So we would never show that.
What was Catherine Bigelow's first film called? Or maybe it wasn't her first film. It was a sci-fi film. That was very weird. It was very good too. Should look that up. Just see if you probably have already put it on your list, but I know she's kind of mainstream now, but that film isn't very mainstream.
Let me see if I can find it. As long as our conversation seems to be dwindling.
Yeah. Sure.
I was wondering though, I really like the cinematography on this film. Can you talk a little bit about how that came together?
Yeah, well, that was Robert. I mean, my DP, Robert Muratori, he's very, very talented, and he actually shot The Frame as well. So, and he and I worked together really well. It was a collaborative process. I had some certain shots in mind the whole time, but then we would usually every day come up and talk in the morning about how we're going to cover every scene. And we really wanted to make sure we just had about one location for most stuff. So we wanted to make sure every scene had a little bit of a different angle or a different look, or, we're seeing a little bit more of the room. A big part of it was starting, just on Carter, so that we'd slowly reveal the room, because you're only going to get to see this room. So we don't want to show it all at once. So that was part of it. But my belief about cinematography too is that it's really important to have good-looking people and good-looking locations on camera. The DP can only do so much with stuff that, I don't mean handsome people, I mean interesting looking, interesting outfits, and DP can only do so much with not good locations and stuff. So that was a big part of our process, was to give this high budget feel, despite the fact that we had nothing. But thank you so much. I'm so glad you liked it, the look.
I looked up Catherine Bigelow's filmography, and her first couple of films listed are not particularly odd. She did do Strange Days.
Strange Days. That's
yeah. That one is odd enough. I think it's not on any of the streaming services we use. I have a copy of it behind me. You see, I have a room full of DVDs and Blu-rays. And I have it over in the
Strange Days really not accessible? That's crazy. Oh, you mean you have a very particular streaming service?
You see, during the pandemic, we organizers made a couple of decisions, and one of them was we wouldn't show a film unless it was available on at least one free streaming service.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
So if you have HBO or Netflix or something like that, yeah, you can get it, but we're not going to require people to pay any money other than have an internet connection.
Sure. Got it. Yeah.
But yeah, that one's odd enough.
Yeah, and that should show up someday on one of those streaming services because it's a good film.
And hopefully we'll be back in live shows in libraries again. Again, those are free. And one of the things I used to do a lot before we began social distancing cinema was write to independent producers or distributors really, and get public performance permission, because for us to show a movie in public, we need public performance permission. And a lot of the independent filmmakers are very happy to give it to us. They like the exposure.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, thanks so much for having us, David and Andrea or Andrea.
Andrea, yeah.
Andrea, yeah. Thanks for having us, and I hope some people got to watch the film, and let me know if you have any other questions or someone else has questions. Just you can forward them on to me. I'm happy to answer them.
Well, let me add one last thing about tonight's session. We had almost nobody from the club show up.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they didn't watch the film.
Okay, good.
I often get email or even meet people on the street saying, hey, that movie last Tuesday or last Thursday, that was a great movie, but they don't sign up on our event page.
Sure, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
That's not required, and they don't sign into the discussion. So probably a lot of people will watch the discussion later.
Great, fantastic.
So,
yeah, like I said, if anybody
serves them right if it spoils it.
Yeah, I don't think the film is hard to spoil, I think, because it's so dense. But yeah, if you do have any questions, you can just forward them to me. I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
In the chat, I've posted the link for our next month's program. It's on August 26th, and the film is Love and Time Travel. So we hope that people can join us, watch the film online, and be with us for the discussion that month. But thank you, Chris, and thank you for everyone who is here or not here for joining us tonight.
Or not joining us, yes. All right, thank you. I really like this.
Yeah, thank you, David. I really appreciate it. It was fun talking about it.
And I hope you have a future project that we can do this again with.
I hope so. Yeah. They'll definitely be odd. I guarantee that.
Normal films are for normal people.
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.